Hello. Good afternoon. How is everyone here today? I'm excited. Are you? Yeah? Okay. This is the first time that we're doing something, and I think it's special. This is a time where we can tap into the knowledge of God, and we have a resource, Pastor Randy Maxwell, who's going to lead out today. But before that, let's begin with prayer, and I'm going to ask our first elder to come up and pray for us, if he would, Albert Munanga.
Shall we bow our heads and pray? Heavenly Father, we just want to thank you for bringing us together in this manner to be able to talk about a few things that pertain to life in terms of love and marriage. And we pray that you will give us this opportunity to discover things that we need to know, and so that our behaviors and our attitudes may move towards that understanding and application of these principles. Because ultimately, if we do anything wrong in this area, we will be living in perpetual oppression, and that is dreadful. And so we thank you for being able to show your love right now to give us this special opportunity. Be with the speaker and everybody that will contribute, and may we discover the beauties that are bundled up in love and marriage. In Jesus' special name, amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Now, if you don't mind me asking, how many of you here are married? Okay, we have a few. We all know the pastor is married, so that's a good thing. How many of you are single? Okay, good number. All right. Now, see, love is a complicated thing. For those of you who are married, I think you know what I'm talking about. But for those of you who are not, maybe there are some who are in relationships, so you might have some idea. But we live in a time where the way we communicate has changed, not only how we talk, but how we meet people, right? And 10 years ago, you probably, in order to contact a friend, you'd probably send regular mail, you write the letter, and you mail it out. It's working? Test. Yeah? Okay. So 10 years ago, you probably would have communicated with a friend or family differently from how you do now, right? Technology and communication has changed so much that in the world we live in today, there is an app called Tinder, right? How many of you have heard of the app Tinder? Okay. And who can tell me what Tinder is and what it does? Yes. Hold on. Let me give you a mic.
Isn't it like an app where you can swipe right to see who you match up with, and then if you like that person, you swipe left, and then that's when you meet up or have a date?
Amazing, isn't it? An app where you can essentially swipe left or right to determine whether this individual is compatible with you or not, so you could possibly meet them. 10 years ago, this would have never been possible. And communication and technology continues to increase, and I'm sure there will be more apps just like Tinder. Now, according to the Pew Research Institute, 15% of all American adults have used some form of online dating sites or mobile dating apps. Now, while not all of you here fall into that category, I'm sure that Facebook is something that you use regularly, correct? In fact, I can tell you a little secret. When my wife and I met, we used Facebook to talk a lot. We used to chat, and there was a particular game on Facebook. I'm not sure if anyone remembers, called Farmville. Does any? I see the faces. We used to play Farmville all the time. My wife will probably tell me off when I get home, but I'll risk it, right? So this afternoon, the reason why we're here is because we have questions as individuals. Bottom line is, at some point, if you want to spend the rest of your life with someone, you're going to have to make a choice. That choice has to be an informed decision because it's going to change the rest of your life. This afternoon's topic, dating, love, and marriage in the 21st century, is going to be held by our own Pastor Randy Maxwell. And I'm going to tell you a little bit. Hopefully he gives me the time. But Pastor Randy Maxwell, he and Suzette have just moved here from Kuna, Idaho. Pastor Randy is an international speaker, and he is an author of several books. I had the book here. Oh, here you go. If My People Pray. If you haven't read this book, give it a try. It will change the way that you view prayer and hopefully enhance your relationship with God. He has an upcoming book coming out entitled Love Strong, and hopefully in the future we will have another couple more seminars based on that book. Pastor Randy loves the Lord, and I love his life quote. It says, I'm going to get this right. My wife and I went over this yesterday. The need is great. We're going to get this right. The need is great, the key is prayer, and the time is now. Pastor Randy.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon. I'm glad that you guys came for this. I'm excited. I've been wondering what it was going to be like to be here and to discuss this topic with you. Love, dating, and marriage in the 21st century. My wife and I did our love, dating, and marriage in the 20th century. So I'm just letting you know. We have a little bit of a time difference there. How many of you are 18? I want to see the 18-year-olds in the room. 18. 18? 18. Only two. 18. Let me see the 20-year-olds. The 20-year-olds. Any 20s? You're over 20. So we have 18 and then no 20s, and then we go up from there. You're 20? Almost 20. In a few days. Okay. All right. The reason why I'm asking that is because I want to let you know that I proposed to my wife, Suzette, on our 18th birthday. We got married at 20. So see, many of you are older now than we were when we got married. How did that happen? We didn't have Tinder. How did that happen? We couldn't swipe left or right, you know. Our Facebook was, the phone book. We had to look at each other face to face and make, dates and appointments the old-fashioned way. You pick up the phone and actually called or did it in person. I'll tell you how we met. We actually met in church. We were going to the same church, and we went to the University Seventh-day Adventist Church in Los Angeles, California. We sat in the balcony, and my mom and my dad, I sat with my parents on this side of the balcony. All the teenagers, right, the young people, would sit in the upper balcony. And in those days, we couldn't text each other in church because we didn't have cell phones. So all the kids knew sign language. And so from where I was sitting next to my parents and where the other teenagers were sitting, we could, spell out words and communicate by signs when we were supposed to be listening to the sermon, right? But it's how we communicated. And one Sabbath, my mother saw Suzette in the balcony and said to me, "You see that girl?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "You should be talking to her." Well, as it turned out, we at the time were dating each other's best friend. So her best friend was my girlfriend, and my best friend was her boyfriend. And the problem is that those two people, those two individuals, bless their hearts, they were complex individuals. They had issues. And so Suzette and I would talk to give each other advice, right, on how to deal with, right? So in the process of us consoling one another and counseling one another, we got to be pretty good friends. And one day, our respective boyfriend and girlfriends had really given us a hard time, and we were both over at the house feeling sorry for ourselves. And my mother came in the room, and she saw us all down in the dumps. And she said, "You know, you guys are really pitiful." She said, "Here you are moping over these other two people when you should be together." And it was like a new thought. So it was like, well, maybe so. So we started hanging out together more, and pretty soon our friendship became love. And we're going to talk about that and talk about how you know what the Bible really talks about as love, and what some of your questions are. I have 3 daughters, and 2 of them are single. One is 27 and one is 23. And I asked them, and I have some adopted daughters and sons too, that I also asked their opinion. What kind of questions should we be dealing with young adults and dating and the whole thing? And I don't know what's the next slide. What is it? Oh, okay, I'm not ready for that yet. I'm coming to that. Okay, good. But I'm anxious to engage with you and find out. I did some research myself in preparing for this. I've written a book, Love Strong, on God's way of marriage and relationships. Somebody tell me, even before I see your paper, what is kind of the most baffling aspect of relationships today, in the 21st century? When you have all of these great technology tools at your disposal, Facebook, Tinder, there's another one I saw, because there's a bunch of them. There's, of course, Match.com. Which one? Oh, really? There's 1,000 of them, okay? There's one called OkCupid. There's all kinds. And I looked at what people had to say about their experiences using these sites, as well as their experiences with people, dating and what have you. And I'll share with you some of that, but it's really all over the map. It's all over the map in terms of responses. So let me just say, is someone willing to break the ice and be kind of the first person to just say, what's kind of the most perplexing aspect of meeting people or relationships that you deal with right now? Is it on the dating side of it? How do you meet somebody? What are you looking for? What are the things that kind of challenge you the most? Okay. Yes.
I think the expectation of 2 people meeting and one expecting to actually develop something from that, when we should actually just go in and say, "Hey, I'll be your friend."
Okay.
Rather than complicate things, your mind.
Okay. So just a nice friendship, rather than there being all the weight of expectations. Where is this going to go? And that kind of thing. Okay. All right. Very good. Anyone else want to throw out something? Anybody have their paper filled out? Oh, yes.
Comparing
Comparing yourself with people who are in relationships. Is that a struggle for, okay, what is it? In the comparison, is it, what, feeling somehow less than?
Like for me, I have a younger sister who's married. She's expecting her first child, and so a lot of times, parents and relatives are looking at you like, what's going on? Like,
When are you?
the expectation is, I guess, the same.
Yes. Let me read something to you from one of my adopted sons, because what you just said, he also voiced. I asked him about this. I said, tomorrow we have this young adult meeting, and give me some thoughts, give me some questions. Well, he wrote me this letter. And I could tell that he was venting as he wrote. So I want to share with you what he had to say and see if this matches up with what you're saying. Okay. He said, nice. That's quite a topic. Except for Darren, I have no friends that are familiar with the concept of being single, just like I don't have a clue what it's like to raise a kid. People who have never really been single don't know what that's like. Always biggest hurdle now is meeting somebody, anybody who is smart, has their foundational stuff figured out, doesn't depend on mommy and daddy for every little thing, preferably someone who has been working to support themselves since 18, and shares similar faith, of course. And yeah, being able somehow to meet someone in the right context is probably the hardest. Also, since I like to just go out, here it is. Also, since I just like to go out and have a good time and not be very serious at first, it's the conservative girls that scare me the most. The ones that are already thinking about kids' names on the first date and take things to such a serious level so freaking fast. To be honest, I resent societal pressure a little bit with all these milestone markers you're expected to hit. Oh, you're done with high school? Got to get your degree now, otherwise you'll be looked down upon. Oh, you have your diploma now? Better find the right girl now and put a ring on it. Oh, you're married now? Better get busy and pop out a kid, because raising kids are the greatest joy life has to offer. Like, seriously, there's always the next thing you're supposed to do. So, his first question is it selfish to focus on and build a career before you feel like you're ready to invite someone else into your life? That was his first question. Anybody else? Yes. 29. Okay. Yes, he's 29. He's very accomplished. He's a very accomplished musician. Right now, though, he seems to be very content in his singleness. One of the things that he resents is the label single on events and things like that. And just always feeling that pressure to go to the next step. And I think that's what you were expressing here. And, there is a somewhat of a pressure, especially in the church, to get married. And I'll tell you why. I'll throw this out here. You can agree or disagree with me. I was talking this over with my wife. First of all, in answer to Trevor's question, I don't think there's anything at all wrong with establishing your career first before you invite someone to share your life. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Here's the challenge, and you guys can tell me if I'm right or wrong. Because it's nice to be able to set the table, to have something to offer to people when they come into your life. So to have your schooling out of the way and to have your career started, that's great. You're offering a solid foundation. And people are waiting longer to get married. Like I said, my wife and I, we married at 20, but most people today are waiting until their late 20s to get married. So they do have their schooling done and their career started. It's a good foundation, nothing wrong with that. Here's the challenge, and I think the reason why there's pressure, especially from the church maybe, to kind of push for marriage, and that is this. Can you young people maintain your virtue while you wait to finish the education and get the career started? That's been the concern, really, of the church in terms of temptation. It's a great foundation to start, but with young people getting married later, in their late 20s and early 30s, that's a longer period of time, right, for relationships to develop and to maintain a commitment to purity. Now you tell me, I've thrown that out there. Is that a real thing? Is that a real challenge? Yes? No? How many say yes? How many say yes, that's a real challenge? Maintaining virtue, purity, while you are waiting to get your career and stuff established, okay? Anybody disagree? Anybody say that's not really a challenge? Okay. So I'm assuming that most people agree with that. So there's the balancing act. Can we establish this foundation nice, but still maintain our virtue and our purity while we're getting that established? That's one challenge. Now, remember, I'm telling you what is a concern of the church. The world is not concerned with that. Okay? That is not a concern of the church. I mean, of the world. So it's different thinking when it comes to that. All right? Somebody else have a question? Maybe from your paper. Who's got a paper that's finished? I want to see somebody whose paper is filled out with your questions. Okay. You have yours done? Yeah. Okay. Can I see it? Sure. I just want to take a look at that. Okay. So, we already talked about the societal belief and expectation that you don't want to be single. Comparing yourselves to others in relationships. And the transition from being single to dating. What did you mean by that? The transition from being single to dating. What's the challenge there for you?
What kind of dating is, I guess, appropriate or acceptable?
Okay.
How do you transition?
Okay.
I'm not sure I fully understand. But I know that there's a process that even goes from being single, dating, to engagement, to a marriage.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So how do you guys view dating? What is involved in that process of dating? What do you think? Yep. Okay, getting to know someone. All right. So what would be an appropriate date for getting to know someone? Starbucks. Okay. All right. That's a good place to meet. Share a beverage, right? Talk together, try to get to know one another. All right. Very good. Anybody else? A good appropriate way to make that transition from maybe friend to going out? Yes, Steve.
Doing something in group with many other people around.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Take some of the pressure off as you're making the transition. Take some of the pressure off instead of it being so intense, one-on-one. Especially when you're trying to get to know somebody. You may not feel completely comfortable yet in that intense, focused time. Let's get to know each other better, so let's go on a group. Let's go bowling. Let's do something as a group, and there's less pressure. I can interact with more people in the group, not just you one-on-one. And if we start to like each other and talk, that's fine. But if things aren't going well between us, guess what? I can talk to this person. I can talk to this person. It's not quite so intense. So you're sitting there at Starbucks in silence, Yes, honey?
You can't hear
Okay, so we'll make sure that you use the mic when you respond so they can hear you online. All right? Any other thoughts about dating? Has anybody here actually used Tinder or any of the sites? You've actually done that thing? Yes? Yes? Okay, I'd like to know, what was the experience? I mean, would you recommend it? Was it positive or was it negative? There were hands back here. I'd like to see.
Tinder kind of came out in college, so when I was in college.
Okay.
And it's a lot of fun, but I wouldn't recommend it, at least in this forum, because the type of people on there are more so out for the hookup and not really for knowing you. So,
All right.
I mean, use at your own discretion, but don't be surprised if a date, getting to know someone, then it could be different intentions that you might think is love, but it's no. You're
Okay.
fooled. So yeah.
All right. Okay, that's one perspective. Anybody else want to share their perspective using the dating?
I didn't use Tinder. I actually used an app called OkCupid.
Yes.
And I will say I probably got some of the same experiences, but I mean, there are a few people that I actually went on a few dates with that were nice, but they weren't really looking to actually date you. They just wanted to, like, I guess, at the end of it all, I think it's mainly how she said about the Tinder dating. It's hard to date someone when you have the intention of wanting to actually build something with someone on these sites, and then you meet someone, you've been writing messages, and you have a great conversation with them through these messages, and you meet the person, and they're like, so you want to go back to my place? And I'm like, so no, I don't. Yeah, so it's kind of like, wait, weren't we having this great conversation on these emails this whole time? And then you get this date, and this anticipation has been building about meeting this great person, and then it kind of all falls down where you're like, okay, well, that's not really what your intentions were. So
Yeah.
I will say I had a few great dates that really were nice, that I met the person, I ended up really wasn't interested in them, and then there were a couple that I really did like the person, and they just were basic, and their needs were very basic at that point.
Okay. Some of the people on Reddit were saying, comparing OkCupid with Tinder, and it seems like the opinion that was winning the day was that the people on Tinder tend to be more looking for the hookup. The people on OkCupid tended to be a little bit more introverted. So you were having to kind of bring them out. But each of these sites tend to have a following and a group of people who gravitate towards them. So you're looking for something deeper. Let me ask, are you as young adults looking for something a little more deeper, a little more meaningful, something with a little greater substance to it? Because some people aren't. Some people are, definitely looking for just a good time, and not wanting to get serious at all. I want to just take just a little break and go here to what the Bible has to say about love. Talking about things that are a little bit deeper. Look at how the Bible describes love. It says love is patient, it's kind, doesn't envy, does not boast. It is not proud, does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Is this the kind of thing you're going to find on social media? Now, I suppose it's possible. I suppose it's possible to find somebody who shares those same values, but on the whole, you're probably not going to find that swiping left and right. Okay, it's going to have to go somewhere a little bit deeper. It might be okay to maybe to establish a friendship, like you said, maybe meet somebody. But the expectations tend to be different. The expectations at the end of the evening after a good conversation, yeah, you want to go back to my place. Well, that wasn't my goal. That wasn't my intention. But more and more of the world, that is their goal. So how do we get to this? How do we get to this kind of an experience? And find it, if that's indeed what we're looking for. Anybody have any thoughts on how we get to there? Yes. Oh, wait a minute. The microphone is coming.
I think all of us ourselves have to be there in order to have somebody come into our life to feel the same way.
Amen. Amen. Very good answer. That's what I was going to say, is that as you are looking for this, you must first commit to being that. Okay? Because like attracts like. So if you are committed to being a loving person in this way, you're committed to being patient and kind and not envious and not boastful or proud and not dishonoring others. I mean, that's something that is, especially in social media, and you get a lot of bullying, you get a lot of belittling and that kind of thing. But if you're committed not to doing that, not self-seeking and so forth, you will bring to the table something of substance. And people of substance will gravitate towards that. You will find somebody who also is looking for a deeper quality, a deeper love. Now, I'm going to tell you something. This is hard to come by in a lot of marriages. Just because people are married and just because they are Christians, even if they're Seventh-day Adventist Christians in marriage, this is still hard to come by. You see, because in order to live like this, you have to crucify self. And that's very hard in relationships. Very hard. In relationships, we want to be in control. We want to be in control. And it has done more damage to more relationships and more marriages than I can tell you. There was a time when the divorce rate inside the church was considerably less than that outside. Sad to say, it's about even. It's about even. So what does that mean? It means that people don't understand what real love is. They don't know the challenge, the rigor of love as God defines it. But it is absolutely the best way. All right. Any comments on that aspect or anything else that we've covered so far? I'm still reading off this paper here. What are the 3 relationship issues that you find hardest to reconcile with your faith? All right, so I'm looking for some agreement, some commonality here. Lust. Number 1, lust. The hardest thing to reconcile with faith. Is anybody brave enough to acknowledge that that is at least a challenge, a struggle? Okay? All right. Good. I'm glad to see you guys are human. I'm glad to see that you're at least human. Okay? Yes, let's be honest. Let's be real. And especially at the age that most of you are over 18, your hormones are in full maturity, and what do you do with that? What do you do with those feelings? How do you reconcile that with your faith? Anybody have some thoughts on that? Thoughts on how to deal with lust in the context of my faith as a Christian? Yes. Very shyly, very very tentative hand. Okay.
Well, one of the things for me, which was a challenge, is, and I used to tell my friends, I was like, God makes beautiful people, and so sometimes when you meet someone, and then in just getting the process of getting to know them, your thoughts can run away with you. And generally that's where sin starts, is in the mind. So the mind is like one of the hardest things to control. When you're single, your hormones are raging, and then society tells you that at this age you gotta have already done this. And so, and for me it was really big in my 20s, my early 20s, because I was just like, I need to find, I need to get ready to settle down, like I get my career on track. I was like, but I need a man. But when you begin to build your relationship with the Lord, and that's really kind of what did it, is I began to start, the Lord shifted my focus. And once I got really deeper with God, He has the ability to take your attention that you would put on a human and then turn it on Him. So I began to, it's not without its downfalls. There was many mistakes that I made during the process, but as He turned my attention more towards Him, I began to look at God. Okay, God is the person I'm dating right now. That He became my focus. So then it's easier to get past the temptation of lust, but it is a serious struggle. It is a serious struggle.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for being honest. Anybody else have a comment on this, or want to talk about the struggle, the challenge? Okay, right here. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that the most challenging part about it is because I think sometimes both parties have to be willing to be able to partake in celibacy, that. Because if you're just by yourself, that's really a tough challenge. Because I myself, I was in a relationship such as that where both of us were pretty much in the same state. Yeah, so my girl would say, how do you feel about this? Do you think we're doing this right? Or are you able to take on this challenge? She kept asking me the same question over and over, so I kept thinking to myself, like, oh man, what did I get myself into? It's going to be really hard. So she kept asking me the same thing, and later on, it's like, when I looked out, compare myself to my friends, like the pressure of society, like, oh man, it looks like you're having fun. I compare myself to my friends and whatnot, and it was just such a challenging part of it. So one of the things I dealt with is just, try to go through scripture, read through scriptures, and then look at the Bible verses that talk about, what marriage is, for instance, what sex is meant for, and all those things. It's made for two married people. It's something you have to partake in. It's pleasure. It's like a gift from God. Yeah, you have to take it like that. But at the same time, it's really challenging. I don't know, because most of the times I try to get into a relationship with girls that are in the same mindset as I am, like Christian, they're in faith and all that. But when I find myself in a different situation where maybe I'm dating a non-Christian girl, that challenge gets really, really tough. Because in that particular state, I'm pretty much fighting the battle by myself. Yeah. That's my comment for that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anyone else have some insight? Okay, over here. I appreciate it. I appreciate the honest sharing.
I find that guarding the avenues helps, and being extreme. One of my extreme rules, my friends have thought I was crazy because I've lived on my own since I was 20. But outside of family, I've been alone in my house with one man. and that was a repair guy. So I'm just kind of extreme about things I do and situations I allow myself to be in, because you have to begin with the end in mind.
Right.
So.
Okay. So establishing some boundaries ahead of time to minimize temptation, minimize the opportunities. Okay. All right. Yes. There's more people who want to comment on this. All right.
Where are we? Oh, okay.
I'm not single anymore, but advice that I would share is that sometimes it's really good to have friends and people that you can be accountable to, that that there's strength in numbers. So when you have other friends, especially other friends who are also single, and all of you have made this commitment to purity, and that when you're getting ready to go out with someone, you know, let your girlfriends or your guy friends know, hey, you know, this person asked me out, or, you know, whatever, and kind of run it by your friends, and that way they can kind of help you be more accountable. And also, even though we think of chaperones as something for like teenagers, sometimes it's good to have a chaperone even as adults. Bring a friend or a younger sibling or cousin or niece or somebody with you, because there are certain things that you won't do if you know that I have my little brother with me or whatever. And that really closes the door for certain things to happen sometimes, is to minimize the opportunities for lust to take place.
Okay.
I would like to give her But it's true.
I was just going to add, to date someone that's not just of the same faith as you, but in the same faith as you. I've actually dated a few men that were Adventists and were born and raised Adventists, that pressured me more into doing things that were not of what we were supposed to be doing. And so that's something that I always struggle with, is wanting to date someone that is Adventist, that we have the same values, but you know, we are all on the same page when it comes to everything, because frankly, that's what I've run into for the most part. Everyone that I've dated that is of the same faith is not of the same mindset of the same faith.
Yes.
So that's also something too.
Yes. Thank you for saying that. There are people who like you said, are in the same faith, but they're not on the same page. Okay? And that's part of also of getting to know someone, and part of the dating thing is to find out, okay, where are we together as a group? Are we of the same mind? Do we have the same values? Are we heading in the same direction? And usually you find out pretty soon if you're not on the same page. Okay. Yeah.
Hi, this is just to add on what has already been said. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to share this. I got this message from a friend today.
Oh, good.
And she signed up on eHarmony to just try it out. And she sent me a text. She said, I called to tell you how disappointed I was to all the guys I've been communicating with on eHarmony. Why is no one waiting anymore? And so, you know, what that said to me was, she is actually at the beginning stages of even trying to find someone. She's making her intentions known and saying, okay, what is your perspective on sex before marriage? And unfortunately, everyone that she's talked to seems to be okay with it. And what that communicated to me was, it's very important to make your intentions known at the beginning, you know, because if you leave room for like maybe, maybe not, or like there's something like that should be a non-negotiable thing, and you should make it right from the start that I cannot negotiate this. If you're not okay with it, then, you know, because it's different when someone has fallen and their intention is not to do it again, but it's different when someone is getting in a relationship knowing that I did it and I'm gonna do it again. So it's very important to make sure that you're clear on that and both sides are on the same page when it comes to that. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you for that. Anyone else? Last night, I was looking at some things on Reddit again, and somebody asked this question. It was a young lady, 22 years old, and her question was, is really having sex before getting into a relationship a thing now? Is that the way it is now? I was fascinated by the responses, and I wrote some of them down. Some people said they may not have the time. Listen, they may not have the time or energy to put into a romantic relationship, but want to explore their sexuality. Okay? So they don't have they know that a relationship takes time and it takes effort. Not interested in that. But they are interested in exploring their sexuality. So that was one answer. Then they have issues with intimacy, so they prefer casual relationships. Okay? And I don't know how you separate sexual relations with intimacy. There's nothing more intimate. So I don't know how you separate that. Listen to this. Everyone is on their own path and has to figure out stuff for themselves. That should sound amazingly to you like a verse from Scripture. At the end of the book of Judges, where it says, and everyone did what was right in his own eyes. And we're living in that time right now. That's the times in which we're living. That's tender times. Everyone does what is right in his own eyes. There is no right or wrong. We have to figure this stuff out on our own. Someone else said, we choose our lifestyle. Some choose not to be emotionally intimate, and some do. Both are valid. It just depends on what kind of relationships you really want. Both are valid. Just depends on what kind you want. There's a huge part of relationship made up by sexual chemistry. Getting into a relationship without knowing how you sexually connect with someone isn't necessary anymore, and I appreciate that. And then this one expressed the sentiments of your friend. It says, no one seems to want to do the dating thing or become friends anymore. Everybody just wants to jump into bed. Okay? So you folks are in a challenging time, because there was a time when society was on the side of purity, was on the side of waiting. Even if, and believe me, from Adam and Eve's day till now, people always broke the rules, okay? People always found a way to get around those things. We know that. But at least the value system that was expressed and supported in public, in society, was on the side of virtue. You now are living in a time when society has turned that upside down. And there is no more moral stigma against casual sex. There's no rules. Everybody has to figure out this stuff on their own, make it their own way. And so you don't have as many societal things kind of holding you back. It's kind of you do your own thing. So to have those values, you've got to have that in yourself, okay? You've got to know who you are. You've got to know what your goals are in life, what you're aiming for. You're aiming for biblical love, not the kind of stuff that's available freely, that's sung about in on the music videos and what have you. You're looking for something deeper, something different. So you're praying and you're asking God to bring into your life someone of like mind and like values. Okay? And you've got to trust and you've got to believe that God has someone for you like that, and be patient enough to wait. Sometimes you will be tempted to settle. For whatever reason. Maybe you think that, my time is running out. There's no good, men anymore. There's no good women anymore. So this is as good as it gets. Okay? Don't settle. God has someone for you. If you ask him, he says he'll give you the desires of your heart. You be the person, first of all, that you want to have in a relationship. Be sure that you are that person. And then wait on him to bring that special someone into your life. Doesn't mean that you can't go out and have friends, but I think we've had some good advice here to go out in groups, even with a chaperone if necessary. There's different things that you can do to help lessen the opportunities for Satan to get in there. Okay, we've got some other ones here too. Question? Yes.
So you say don't settle, and we all know God works in some mysterious ways that we sometimes, actually most of the time, we don't understand how he works. And so is it possible that you, or as a person, you have a desire to get married, but that's not God's plan for you, and his plan is that you stay single, and how do you reconcile that with the desire that you have in your heart, and also the promise in the Bible that says, God said that it is not good that for man to be alone.
Yes.
So how do you, because that's a possibility, right?
It is.
And how do we prepare yourself for something like that?
Wow, it's a good question. I think it goes back to your first loyalty. Your first loyalty is to God and his plan and his will for your life. So you are open to what God has for you. You may want with all your heart to be in a marriage relationship, and it doesn't mean that God won't bring it, even if he brings it later in life. But for whatever reason, you find yourself now in a single state. I think Paul said it best when he says, I've learned whatever state I am to be content. And again, if God is the overarching force in your life, and you're putting him first and you're seeking him first in his kingdom, then your energy and your passion is going to be first directed towards him and staying busy doing his work and his calling on your life and finding out what that is. And trusting him that if it is meant for you to have a person, he'll bring it into your life. If not, then guess what? He will make up the difference. He will satisfy you even in your singleness. And that's a hard thing, especially if it's your dream to be married. But you have to remember, God was the one who said it's not good for man to be alone. So I think it is his design. I think it's his preference and his plan for us to be in committed marriage relationships. And so I would say hold on to that trust. Hold on to the fact that it was his idea in the first place and that he's able to do it for you. If it turns out like Paul was single. And he said, you know what, I'm glad I am, because I can devote all my time and all my attention to doing the work of the Lord. But that's a special gift. And not everyone is called to that. Most of us are called to marriage relationships, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being single if that is what God is calling you to do too. I would say live your singleness with as much fidelity and with much faithfulness as you would do if you were married. Okay? Because here's another temptation. I'm going to tell you another temptation once you do get married. Once you do get married and you do start to establish a home and a family with a career and all the things that go along with marriage, the other temptation will be to let your mate or your child take the place of God. That your mate or your child becomes your all in all. And whether you realize it or not, slowly but surely that relationship with God again slips into the background. You're doing the stuff of life, right? You're going to work and you're keeping that relationship going or whatever it is you go. But slowly but surely, God is slipping into the background because you're consumed with just life and doing the things that you always do. Okay? It can happen in a marriage context. So somehow, whether single or married, you've got to keep your focus and not allow anything else to take the place of God in your life. You ideally, the prayer of your heart should be that both of you, yourself and your spouse or potential spouse, are seeking God with all their heart first independently. And then together, you come together and you're still seeking God first. Okay? That's ideal. But you can lose God in singleness. You can lose him in marriage. Okay? And I've talked to any number of couples, especially does it become evident when couples are in trouble and you're coming for counseling, and it is pretty clear that for at least one of the partners, the other person, and the relationship has become their God. And so to get those things back in balance sometimes takes work. But yeah, it's a challenge either way. Okay? Anybody? Oh, I think I have something else on the screen. Let's see if I remember. Yes, safe sex. What is it? Safe sex is the physical, emotional, and spiritual celebration of selfless, committed love between heterosexual couples in the context of holy matrimony. God is not a prude. He is not anti-sex. He invented it. He knew exactly what he was doing. He could have made reproduction very clinical. You know how cells divide? Okay, they just divide. And there's no relationship there. No one gets any chocolate, no dinner, nothing. They just divide. Okay? And there's all kind of ways of reproduction that are devoid of any kind of pleasure. God, being a God of pleasure and being a very creative God, made populating the earth a pleasurable experience. So he knows what he's doing. He's not against it. But he also knows how powerful it is and how it can be corrupted and how it can be damaging. So he put in some boundaries. And within those boundaries, he says, go for it. Celebrate. That's what the book of Song of Solomon is all about. Don't let anybody try to spiritualize Song of Solomon and try to tell you that's a metaphor for God's love for the church. Okay? That is not what's happening in Song of Solomon. Okay? So God is all for it, but he is for it within a proper context. Anyone have a comment on that? A question? Good. Thank you.
You say that, like, okay, sex, like, on the marriage night or, after you're married is for celebration. But for some people, it can be, like, a painful experience. So why is, like, the church or some people against sex before marriage so they can prepare for after marriage and have it be celebration?
Okay. Excellent question. And in fact, somebody, not here, but I think one of my daughters gave me that same question. And somebody wrote on Reddit last night, too. They said, what's wrong with trying to find out your sexual compatibility beforehand? All right. It's true. Sex can be a painful experience for some after the fact. Okay. But if it is, especially in the times in which we live, there are things to help that. Okay? There are things to help that so that it is not. And even if you were to find out ahead of time, if you love the person truly, and they truly love you, I mean, that's just not going to stop. That's just not going to come to an end, because there's a problem. There's a commitment that will press on beyond that. And say, well, let's get help. Let's figure this out. The problem of sex before marriage is that the sexual relationship, with its release of hormones and everything, was designed as a kind of relational superglue. It was designed to bond the husband and the wife together into one person. Bible says, right? We had the man and the woman, and then the two become what? One flesh. The two become one. Through the sexual relation, two human beings come together and share as no other sharing can be. It's on a level that is, it is on a biological, physical level as well as emotional and all those other things. Because there's actual fluids shared in common from one body to the next. And it's intended to bond you as one and to make you one. And the problem is that you cannot be emotionally bonded to this person and that person and this person and this person and that person and this person. People do it all the time. And some seemingly without any emotional attachment. It's like, well, it's just casual. It's just the way things are done now. I was looking at, apparently the standard for waiting for sex is somewhere between the third and the fifth date. That seems to be the standard. Somewhere between the third and fifth date. Okay? Before that, it's too soon. And after that, there must be something wrong. Okay? So I'm just telling you, that's the world standard. Okay? But that's not how God intended it. And he intended that to bond you into one, to make you a strong force together, and bring you together in a certain way. What are some of the other, you tell me, because I've got plenty of examples, but you tell me, what are some of the dangers of premarital sex? And you can, oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. You just tell me what some of the problems might be.
One of the problems you might face is that while you have explored your sexuality, it will then give you something to compare. So maybe if you've had sex before marriage or with lots of different people, then you are bonded to someone who you're now married to and you're not satisfied because you've done a lot of experimenting and now you have a comparison. So you feel as if there's a deficit.
Ouch. Okay. That's good. That's good. Okay. Anybody else want to comment on that? Talking about what are the potential downfalls, some of the potential dangers of sex before marriage. Anybody else? Yes, right here and then back here. I want to hear from the guys too. Guys, speak up.
I think that the whole idea of sexual compatibility being a physical thing is somewhat of a lie from Satan. I think most psychologists will tell you that your sexiness or your sexuality is actually mental more so than physical. And I think that if you have a certain type of relationship with someone where you are more intimate with them mentally and spiritually and emotionally connected to that person, I think it makes the physical compatibility easier or better. So if I'm hooking up with this guy, like, oh, he's really attractive, let's see if we're compatible, but we're not connecting emotionally and spiritually or whatever, I think even within that sexual experience, there's going to be this emptiness because sex, as you were saying, isn't just physical, but it is emotional. And the emotional, spiritual connection that you have in that relationship with someone is actually the most important and essential part of having a good sexual experience with that person. So that even if it isn't like, wow, bang, or something like that, it's just because it was with that person that you are really connected with. That's what makes it really special. You can always learn how to have the bells and whistles and do the other stuff between you if you have good communication. But if you don't have that good communication and a solid foundation in your relationship with the person, then that's all you have is just sexual compatibility. But that's not what you're really seeking for. You want the physical connection as well as that spiritual and emotional connection.
Okay. Thank you. I saw another hand too. Did I? Up here? Right here. Yes.
I was just going to say that sometimes premarital sex can cause a false sense of emotions for male and female, which would be the deception part of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It may make you think there's something there when there really isn't. Okay. Yes, Albert.
So the issue of sex before marriage and also the issue of having multiple sexual partners is actively being studied every day. So we have lots of information about these topics, and some of them are beginning to suggest that people that may have had premarital sex are more likely to have more premarital sex with other people And so they will fall into a category known as those that have had multiple sexual partners. Now, that category of people, in a lot of longitudinal studies involving thousands of people being looked at, are being known to be at a higher risk of anxiety, depression, alcoholism, and many other, including cancers, especially in women, including cancers, because sex is more than just physical contact. There is a chemical sharing. There's a sharing of chemical elements between two bodies, like you said,
Yes.
at a chemistry level. So it's amazing that there can be consequences, and then of course emotional consequences. Like people that have been frustrated because they're too young to do what they did, and they're now seeking drugs, they're now seeking alcohol, they are being depressed, they're being anxious, and they're having an entire host of these emotional issues, right? So, but the truth is, we actually don't know the full range of problems that might bring in the long run. But we know one thing, that is, there can be a lot of issues with that.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Oh, hand. That's a very aggressive hand there.
Sorry, because I have some. I think there's always two sides or two coins to the side. So
Okay.
because I have friends that did wait until marriage,
Yes.
and they did the pre-counseling before marriage, and
Yes.
they believed that this was the person that God gave them, and they were in love, and they studied the Bible together, and they got married, both waiting until marriage, and it was not what they expected. It was terrible for them. It wasn't at all what they believed a sexual relationship with their husband or wife was supposed to be, and it brought a lot of different turmoil that maybe wouldn't have happened if they had preconceived ideas as to what was expected or what they should be doing or that person should be doing, and they were not happy and they were unsatisfied. So I feel like, yes, of course we as Christians would want to wait, but what happens when you do wait and you do all these things that are supposed to be done for what the Bible says and what the church says, and you do it and it does not work out and you are unsatisfied, and that connection that you're supposed to be having with your significant other never really is there because you are unsatisfied and you don't feel that type of connection with that other person. Because it does happen.
Okay. All right. All right. And that's being real. Would you suggest that in that case, had they been sexual beforehand, they would have discovered this disconnect physically, and at that point would have said, you know what, maybe we're not suited for each other, and move on? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Okay. Right. Okay. I'm going to explore this a little bit, because let's say that the incompatibility or the lack of satisfaction in that particular situation is not sexual. Let's say that the couple actually is very compatible sexually. In fact, maybe that's the best part of their relationship. But they have deficits in other places. And they did wait, and they did, all the things that they should do. And here they are in their marriage relationship, and there's another deficit, whether it's, I don't know, whether it's their communication, whether it's the way they fight, whether it's finances or something else, children, but they have some other area of dysfunction or incompatibility. Sexually, they're fine, but they've got this other issue, and there's unhappiness now, and there's disappointment and all the rest. What is that couple supposed to do? What is that couple supposed to do? You see, I think it's the same either way. Whether it's a sexual incompatibility or some other problem, when a couple, a committed Christian couple, comes into problems and into an issue, their first line of defense is not, man, I guess we made a mistake and I need to leave. Their first line of defense is, how can we fix this? What can we do working together before God to bring about a resolution? Separation, divorce shouldn't be an option. You know, when I talk to couples that are getting ready to get married, we kind of establish this. Look, you're going to encounter difficulties. You're going to encounter challenges in your marriage. Take divorce off the table. Because this is a commitment that you're making to the person to love them forever. And that is a rigorous love. That is a commitment. That's a godlike commitment that says, I'm never going to leave you, never going to forsake you. And if that's a two-way commitment, that means when we run into difficulties, we're going to do our best as human beings with God's help to work through this issue. If there's an incompatibility sexually, we will go to the sex therapist. We will, go to the doctors and find if there's a medical condition that exists that's causing this to be less than satisfactory. We will, if we have a financial problem and one of the partners is a compulsive gambler or whatever, we'll go and we'll deal with that. But we work it together because we're committed to God first and then to each other later. We're in a marriage. We're in a love relationship. So I think that on either side of that equation, that's the answer. Realistically, you will find plenty of opportunities to be disappointed in your relationship. Okay? There will be deficits and disappointments. But the main solution to that is not to bail out. I understand that there are times when, human beings being what we are, things don't always work. I'm realistic about that. Obviously, when you have a divorce rate in the church that's equal to that outside the church, you know that there's a problem. But you understand what I'm saying? Fundamentally, you go into it with the mindset that whatever difficulties we're facing as a couple, we're committed to working through them. Okay? That is God's ideal. We live in a sinful world. There are going to be problems. I recognize that. Dorcas.
Okay, I'll be right back. A busy man today.
I just thought about this talking to Sister Maxwell. And I thought in terms of, I guess, sexual compatibility in marriage and stuff, I would imagine that when I think there's like a stereotype that people that are virgins and they wait until they're married, it's like the thought of sex is already more of a negative connotation, like the whole sphere of it.
Okay.
So sometimes I think some people, at least friends of mine, that they're waiting until marriage,
yes.
Sex in general, they're really timid about it. So I guess I would imagine that what's going to change when they get married, that they're still going to feel timid about it and those issues could still arise because it's almost like you're having sex, it's okay to do it now, but you still have this negative sex is bad unless I'm married thing. So you don't really communicate what your spouse could like or what the spouse can like about you or or
Right.
how you two can mesh well together. So I think that can go into what her question about, like, what happens when you do
Yeah.
get into it and you're not sexually compatible. Because some people think, well, I'm not waiting until married because I want to know what she or he's like. You know, I want to know if we're this or that. Like, what if it's whack? You know, like things like that. Because people really do think that. But
Yeah.
I think that, you know, people, at least us as Christians, we need to be more comfortable talking about it in the sense that it's, of course, it's something that's supposed to be celebrated when you're married, but I think there's still that balancing act, because of course there shouldn't be a gray area with sex, but it's almost like there is, where people don't really know where they fall on the spectrum.
Okay. Good. Part of that. I like it. You have a lot of opinions. It's good.
Okay, just 2 points. So the first thing that came to mind is when you're getting ready to marry someone, and I think I studied Adventist home, and I wanted to hear what Sister White had to say in terms of, not Adventist home, young people, messages to young people. And she speaks of true love. And so true love is based on principles and not emotions. And I think a lot of time with society, they press the emotional or the feelings behind it. It's what you feel. When you look at Corinthians and you're looking at that scripture about love, God is based on principle. He has a lot of principles, and not always is it pleasurable, but it's things that you have to grow with. And so when I look at it in terms of like, when it's time for me to get married, I understand that there's going to be areas where I'm not yet comfortable, or maybe I'm a baby in them. But it's something that the two of us, as committed adults, as committed people to God, keeping God first, that we're going to make the commitment to, maybe we're not good right now, but we don't know what we can be as long as we continue to work on it together. Amen. But it's less about the emotion. It's more about, it's getting past the feeling of, okay, it doesn't feel right, so it's all jacked up right now. But if you give it time, some things you have to just give it a little bit more time and work through it. It's not always going to be easy, but it's getting past the feelings to, okay, this is where we've decided to go based on God's principles. Yes. And when you put the principles ahead, the feelings, because feelings come and go. They can go either way. But principles stand. That's just how I look at it.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. I don't want to minimize the reality of challenges that we face, because you do. You will find there are, and I don't have statistics right off the top of my head, but the number of young adults, both male and female, who have been sexually abused, right, in childhood, is staggering. So you think about those people growing up and becoming married. Some of those feelings about sexuality, about themselves, are shaped by the abuse they suffered earlier. And that now is coming into the marriage relationship. So the chances, the opportunities for a disconnect, for problems in a marriage, and it can be a Christian marriage too, are heightened because of these negative thoughts and feelings that are created because of that prior trauma. So what's a couple to do then? Because that scenario is going to be more frequent than less. So it's the same thing. It's that commitment, like you said, it's that commitment to love. It's realizing that my partner or myself may be broken in some way, but we are committed to loving each other as God said to love each other. There will be patience. I will be patient with you. You will be patient with me, okay? And we are going to work through this together, okay? And like I said, that would be for any situation, not just sexually. I'll bring this up. We all know about STDs and disease, so I don't need to go into that, because everybody you sleep with, when you sleep with that person, you're sleeping with all of those people, okay? All of that genetic and all of that DNA. But here's something else, and the emotional thing that was mentioned here of comparison. I counseled with a young lady who was dating a young man, and she was sexually active with him. And she was a church member, and I had counseled her against that. But she made it clear to me that her own value system was such that she did not agree with the church's stand, and I don't know why she said the church, because it's God, not the church, stand on premarital sex. So she was active, she made no bones about it. But she came to me, it wasn't at Starbucks, but it was a coffee shop, because she had a problem. She wanted to talk to me about this problem. So we sat down, and she was telling me about her situation with her boyfriend. And the problem that she was facing was that she was actually ruining the relationship out of jealousy. She was jealous of her boyfriend's past relationships. And she was jealous to the point where it was as if he was cheating on her. And I asked her directly, I says, is he cheating on you? And she says, no, I don't think so. I said, do you have any evidence of such? No. I said, is he calling them? Are they calling him? Are they coming over? Is he going out? What? No. She says, I believe he's committed to me. So I said, what's your problem? And she said, I can't. She was younger than him. He was more experienced. And she could not get past wondering if he was comparing her sexually to these other women. She couldn't get past it. And it was causing her to actually ruin their current relationship, because she was badgering him about it. And it's like I said, you're fighting phantoms. I said, you're fighting phantoms. You're worried about what he's thinking about. And I said to her, as gently as I could, I said, you see, this is why. This is why we wait. Because you don't have all that emotional baggage. Wondering about who they were with, and if they're, am I as good? Do they like me as much? You know, all these kind of things. And yeah, that situation, unfortunately, turned out not so great. But yeah, there's all kind of reasons. It's very strong emotionally. And so that's why, and the Lord knows that, and that's why he put the boundaries that he did to protect it. But these are very good questions, and they're very real questions. So I applaud you for digging in and asking some rigorous things. It's very good. Yes, Emmanuel, right behind you, Sam.
I wanted to say that I think it's also important to acknowledge the fact that all marriages are different, and will continue to be different. And I think we should run away from the danger of basing our decisions to get married or to marry or to enter into a relationship of marriage with the understanding of how others have settled or how others have, experienced their marriage relationship. We should also remember that marriage is a gift that God will grant us when we ask. And a lot of people I know don't ask, to get married from God. They make decisions based on how they feel. And I think it's important that when we are considering marriage, first of all, as Christians and as God-fearing children, we ask God first. And what that entails is, the importance of this verse that, we should be patient. Love is patient, and the absence of patience in a marriage relationship or when you're considering marriage leads to verse 7 being rather feeling, unprotected, not trusting, and always not having the hope that is supposed to sustain that journey, and always not having the perseverance for it because we've been comparing. My friend didn't succeed, so I don't think it's going to work for me. Social media is a copycat of what God designed in the beginning of creation. He designed man as a social being, and then social media brings it to our attention and, exaggerates that. God intended us to be guided by his principles to love and not to be taught how to love. Scripture will guide us all the way through into making decisions to marry in order for us to enjoy life. Right. And I think what we are doing is we are spending so much time listening to social media and define a relationship and our marriage from there, rather than looking at God and his design for marriage. And I think we should focus more on what is the purpose of marriage and why should I get married, than getting excited to get married because we think marriage should do this and that to us.
Very good, thank you. There's a question here, and there's a hand over here for the microphone. Okay, good. All right, the hand was back here.
So I'll be quick. And just to kind of piggyback on what he just said, I would recommend, if you haven't read the book, it's called The Sacred Search. What if it's not about who you marry, but why? Nice. And the author is Gary Thomas, and he talks about having a Matthew 6:33 type of search, which is seeking first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. And he talks about not just, sex. He talks about, like different types of marriages. He talks about some of the important questions or discussions you should have with someone before you decide to get married. And when I read that book, I was like, everybody should read this book before they decide to get married.
And what's the name of it again?
The Sacred Search. What if it's not about who you marry, but why?
Okay, very good. All right. Another comment? Albert.
All right. By the way, I need to disclose that I'm married before I say much further. And my wife where is she? She's behind there, that pretty young lady there. So what that means, all the young men that are single, just stay away from that young lady. You never know. This group looks like it's on serious business. Now, I met my wife when she was 14. It was back in Zambia, and I was 19, and it was in child abuse. And I think that okay, so while dating, I was a new Adventist. I think I was in my second year as an Adventist. And so one of the things I must admit, and I'm kind of a little bit embarrassed to say this, was that I had this fierce fascination of this young woman. And as a man, now, men, do we have men in here, young men, men? One of the things I guess we are made that way. We look at beauty and we go beyond. We probably tinker a little bit with a basic need my sister mentioned there. But I had values within me that I treasured. And so I was afraid of going that way, much as I felt the temptation. And so I remember telling her, and I never knew what that would mean later in my life. I told her that, I feel very tempted, but I don't want to do it. If you let me do it before we ever get married, I probably would never marry you. I don't know what I said. I mumbled some things along those lines. She remembers that better. But again, it is easier said than done, right? I was the one that probably applied more pressure. And she never, ever told me, remember what you told me? She, with all the grace, redirected me, and redirected me, and redirected me. More times than that. Thank you, Brother Emmanuel. You can pat me on the back here. No, pat her. Now, here's what happened. As that unfolded, my respect for her heightened. I started seeing a beauty beyond any imagination, the grace and the respect that developed, and even that sort of holy fear of this young woman kind of just engulfed me and consumed me. And I would be lying to you to tell you that, I was this faithful young man that stood my ground. All I'm telling you is that I was senseless, a little bit of some sense that I had, but the grace of God consumed us and made us go through. Now, here's the last point. That's exactly why she married me. She said to me, I pushed back and you listened. I pushed back and you listened. Now, I know my sister somewhere, I don't know who, you pushed back just once and you put a nail in that coffin and ended that relationship. I thank God that she had some patience with me. That I tempted her, she pushed back. Tempted her, she pushed back. And then she respected the fact that every time she pushed back, she saw my tail, and by those days as a young man, my tail was longer. So she saw it coiled and in between my legs. So, I guess what I was going to say is what is on the screen. I'm sorry for being long-winded here. My sister, you just said things that are common to Christians. Christians like us feel pain. We disappoint and we get disappointed. We get fired on the job. We also fire people if we are the bosses. We are exposed to exactly the same aches and pains the world has known for centuries. We are not different. The difference is that when we're in love, our love always go a little further than that of the world, because we have this special connection with the eternal and source of all love. Thank you.
Great. I want to point out. Okay. And this says, what is the one question about dating, love, or marriage that you most want addressed in this conversation? I'm going to address another point. It says, what can one do if you want to separate from someone with whom you've had a sexual relationship? So you've had the sexual relationship, you want to separate from them, what do? And by way of answering that, I'm going to make another statement. And that is, in an audience this size, I want to make sure, very careful about this, I can't assume, and nor should we assume, that everyone is a virgin, that not everyone has been able to maintain that particular goal. Okay? What does that mean? Does that mean then that you can never experience what God had intended? Has that ship sailed? Is it over for you? And the answer to that question is no. With God, we can always begin again. We can always begin again. From wherever we are, we can start and say, Lord, from this point forward, I'm doing it your way. I'm going to do it your way because I know you have the best for me. So never think that because you may have already had a sexual experience that that it's over and that somehow you're tainted. No, that's not the point. God has an ideal, and you are always able to start pursuing that ideal from the moment you make that decision. Okay? So I want to be clear on that. With this situation, you've already been sexual with somebody, and you realize the relationship's not going anywhere. You want to separate from them. You know what? It does complicate things, for sure. But I guess you would break up with them the way you would break up with anybody else. If it's time to go and part company, if you're not married, then it's time to go. And you just need to be able to express very clearly why the relationship is not working, why it's not going in the direction that it needs to go. You have different values, you have different goals, you're pursuing a different way. It's not fair to them, it's not fair to you to continue on in a path of incompatibility. And because you are not married, you can do that. You can untangle yourself. Don't ever think that you're just you're locked in because of that. But relationships are complicated, and you can find yourself paired up with people who are not kind and who are not patient and who are very controlling. And it could be a very dangerous situation for you as well. Hopefully God would open your eyes to see that before it gets too far down the road. But we do encounter these situations. Somebody else has a question here, and we're going to wrap up here in about 15 minutes. Think so? Okay. How can you date multiple people without being labeled a slut? You can't find the right one without dating more than one person, and dating only one person assumes marriage is on your mind, even if it isn't. So, that's a good question. You know what? Again, don't let other people define you. Okay, just because people throw these labels around, slut or whore or man whore or whatever, don't let other people define who you are. You know who you are, and you know your motivations and what it is you're trying to do. You're trying to find a person to connect with, and you date multiple times. That's all right. Thanks for coming. I appreciate your contribution. Okay? So don't worry about that. Okay? You know who you are and what you're trying to do. And people throw around labels and stuff all the time. It's really interesting. I've noticed this. One of the biggest accusations against Christians and the church people is that we're judgmental. Those Christians, they judge people. Have you been online? I mean, there is some heavy judgment going on all the time, and it's not in the church, okay? So nobody can point that finger or throw that stone. Okay, there's plenty of judgment to go around. But know who you are within yourself. And that's the main thing about dating and relationships, is that have a good sense of yourself. Who you are as a child of God and what your value system is. What are you about? Where are you trying to go? What is it that you're pursuing? What are your dreams? And when you do go out with people and you are trying to find out your compatibility, talk on that level. I mean, you may not do it date one, okay? Because that's kind of intense. You may not do it date one. But sooner or later, if you think that there might be something, a spark happening or whatever, and you want to invest a little bit more, go deeper and talk about your dreams. Talk about your hopes, your ambitions, your aspirations, what it is that makes you tick. What are your passions in life? What do you want out of life? And try to get connected on that level to see if there's something there. Because fundamentally, somebody might be going in a completely different path. Okay? And if you are a Matthew 6:33 person, and my value system is seeking God first in his kingdom, that will weed the field quickly. Because there's a whole lot of people who that's not their value system. Matthew 6:33 is. But you're looking for that person who is. So it starts with a good self-image. and because you want to be the person that you're looking for in a mate. You want to be that person first. Okay? Yes.
Okay, so I'm just going to throw this out there. I think when we were preparing to do this program, one of the questions that came up quite a lot with the individuals who participated in the video was, how do you know that the individual that you want to spend the rest of your life with is the right one?
Is the one.
I think my wife and I actually had a conversation with my brother-in-law last night, and the same question.
Yeah.
I've seen this girl, I like her, she's good looking, but how do I know?
Yeah. Well, initially, let's face it, chemistry has a lot to do with it, right? Especially from the young man's point of view. That's why I wanted to hear from more of the men, okay? Look, guys, we're visual. And ladies, you need to know that. You need to know that. Men are visual. So that's going to be their first point of reference. That's powerful and dangerous. And women, you need to know your power. You need to know it and understand it. Because that's going to be the first point of reference for males. Okay. So first is initial kind of a animal attraction. I like the way that person looks. I like that person. Okay, so then you move on, and hopefully you build a friendship. And that's what I would say. Before your lovers, be friends. Like the person before you love them. Okay? Because fundamentally, if you don't like them, that love is going to grow thin. that animal attraction is going to grow thin. So you have to fundamentally like the person. I like being with you. I like spending time. I don't have to have a super fantastic date. When my wife and I were dating, we were a fairly boring couple. We didn't do a lot of things. We just liked to hang out. We'd be perfectly content at home watching TV or whatever. We didn't have to, I didn't, unfortunately, because I didn't have any money, I didn't have to take her on really expensive dates because we just enjoyed each other's company. So there was a friendship before there was the romance, okay? And then the romance came, and that just heightened everything. So I married my best friend, and that's ideally the way it should be, the person you really like to hang out with, okay? How do you know it's the one? The one. Steve has an answer for us. I love this. I'm waiting with bated breath. He knows. He put his hand right up. How do you know it's the one?
How did Jesus pick the disciples?
Oh, spent the night in prayer.
Well, if he picked a dozen from there, why can't you pick the same one, just one? Same way.
Not 12, just one, right? Okay, definitely. You're definitely praying about it. Absolutely. I've heard it said. It's so funny because I know it happens all the time, especially on our Adventist college campuses, where especially the young man, will say, "God showed me that you are the one." All right. The girl says, "God didn't tell that to me." Okay. he failed to give me the same memo. Okay. All right. Oh, Albert wants to speak. She wants to speak. Okay.
Mine is Ro. I just want to disclose how I knew, she was the one.
You know?
How I knew is that I watched her very closely, the way she giggled and the way she laughed. I noticed that every time she laughed with the general population, she had no dimple. When she laughed, looking at me, she had a dimple.
Thank you.
Did I mention that men are visual? Did I mention that? Saw the dimple. Okay.
Is there really a concept such as the one? Don't you just decide yay or nay?
Okay.
I see you.
Okay.
I saw his hand.
I've got a question. There's a scripture in the Bible. It says, says, man's eyes are never satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is it a sin for a married man to admire other women? This is because I've asked this question because I have a friend of mine who, sometimes was like says there are challenges in this world where like you marry and then you start facing temptations. Even when you're married, you start admiring other women.
What's that?
I'm not married, but I'm not married, but the reason I've asked this question is because I had a conversation with a friend of mine some time back, and hello?
Yes. Your friend is married?
Yes.
Okay. So he's asking the question.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Now, I'm going to come back to that
Yeah.
because there was some comments still on our original question.
Yes.
About the one. And I'm going to come back to this one.
I'm going to advocate for this book again. So we believe are studying now in the concept of a soulmate, right?
Yes.
That there's one person or there's the one. But just to kind of mention a little about what he says in the book is that God has given us the knowledge and the wisdom to do more like an investigative type of work. So it is your responsibility to find out more about this person and use your wisdom that God has given you. So God does not choose for us, right? God gives you the knowledge and the wisdom to learn more about this person, and then you make the decision. Mm-hmm. And so in prayer, you pray to God to help you understand who this person is and then help you make the final decision. He will not make that decision for you. And he mentions how, people pray and say, I believe that God will bring the right one. Actually, he challenges that and says, you have to take the responsibility as well to go find that one and use the knowledge that he has given you. Now I have a question on that. How long do you date someone before you decide, okay, this is the one? Because I feel like some people have married, they met and then 6 months later, they're married, which I feel like that's too soon. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there's a standard for everybody, but in your opinion, how long should I take the time to know somebody before I make that decision?
It's good. You know what? And there's no rule of thumb as to, like I can't tell you a year or a year and a half. Let me say this, though. Try to be in relationship with someone long enough to go through a crisis together. Try to be in relationship with someone long enough to go through a crisis. Because, see, in the initial phases of a relationship, you are all on your best behavior. Right? You are putting forth your very best. You're dressing your best. You're smelling your best. You're talking your best. Everything is your best, right? And the house is all clean when they come over, and everything is just perfect, okay? You need to know each other long enough to where you break through some of the facade. And you see this person at their worst, not at their best. And if you can go through a crisis together, something serious. Maybe there was a loss in the family, or maybe there was a loss of a job, maybe there was an illness or something, and where you or your mate, your partner, had to rally to your side during a crisis, or you had to rally to their side, and you saw that you could trust them in crisis. That they didn't run, that they were there for you, and that they were real, and you could depend on them, okay? That's important. So I don't have a rule of thumb, but please, by all means, date long enough to go through a crisis and to see the person with their guard down, not up, okay?
I'll come back to you. I see you.
One thing I wanted to say, going off, is the question, how do you know it's the one? One night I was praying to God about that same question, how do I know if I find the one? And he led me to read Ellen G. White's book, The Adventist Home. I think it's chapter 4 or 6. Qualities to be sought in a husband and qualities to be sought in a wife.
Okay.
And there are things that she talks about. Is the person aspiring? Is the person, well, for females who want to look for the guy, does that person make you love God more? Does that person help you find your purpose in life? So those questions can help, you know, ladies, men who want to find the one, who want to know if that person is the one I'm supposed to be with. So that's something that I wanted to share with everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And that's key. Does this person enhance my walk with God? Are they pulling me away from God, or are they enhancing? Are they pushing me towards it? When my wife and I were dating, we were both kind of finding a first love relationship with God at the same time. And so we were there in that discovery phase together and helping each other towards that. So I knew that this relationship was not going to pull me away from God. It was enhancing. It was moving me towards God. That was my goal. And same for her. So that helped me to know that this was the one. Plus, we had been through crisis together. And I saw that, you know, the person was solid. They were the same person they were at their worst as they were at the best. Okay? There's a lot of things that play into that, knowing that this is, you know, this is the person that I will in prayer choose, because you do. You make a choice. You and the person make a choice. These are our values. They're in common. We like each other. We genuinely like each other. We are pursuing God with all of our heart and putting Him first. You know, and all of those things lining up like lights on a runway. Those things in place, then you say, you know what? Let's trust God and walk through life together. And you make a choice to do that. Okay? So, who else had a comment? Oh, and I want to get back to your question about, and that will probably be the last question that we have today. Go ahead.
Well,
man.
for me, really, I always like to challenge God because He's my friend. Mm-hmm. And when I call God my friend, I like to table certain things that I need Him to grant me or give me. And I think I put a list of things that I wanted a girl I was going to marry to have.
The list.
The list. Okay?
That's right.
And in my relationship, I started knocking them one by one. She's got this, she's got that, she's got this. And then after I exhausted my list, then I prayed to God again and said, God, I found, what is satisfying right now. And, I started moving forth. But I think my point is, talk to God as your friend, and as though, what you want is at His best of interests. God will give you bread when you ask for bread. Mm-hmm. And should you do your best and find a piece of your bread broken, God is in the business of fixing. That's one reason He came to earth. He died on the cross so that we who were broken and incomplete would be complete.
Amen. In
Him. So don't go into marriage with fear when you've done your best and you've seen Mr. Right or Mrs. Right and say, let God talk to you and say, this is your best, and I will help you. And in your honeymoon, if you discover one or two things missing and you've already committed, pray to God that He can fix those two things. He is in the business of fixing. I love my wife here. There are things that I found broken and I asked God to fix them. And the Lord has done His best to fulfill my dreams. Hallelujah.
Can I have my microphone? I'm going to take my microphone.
Oh man. You are driving home in the same car, right? Okay, yes.
I agree with everything that the other individuals have said, and I often looked at the story and messages to young people where she talks about Isaac and Rebekah and how Isaac totally entrusted his marriage plans to his father and to God.
Yeah.
And especially in our society now, we don't tend to trust our parents or godly wise counsel, but I think it's, I bring it back around to not only accountability, but having people in your life. They may not necessarily be your parents because maybe you don't have godly parents, but having at least one or two godly people in your life who can look at your relationship objectively. Because sometimes when you're in that relationship, you have stars in your eyes and you can't see. So it's helpful to have someone else to give you an objective view of that relationship. And after you've made sure, is this someone who draws me closer to God? Is this person my best friend? Do I really enjoy spending time with this person alone, doing nothing? Right. My kids kind of like, don't say that, Mommy, but I also look at, do I want to see this person naked? Do I have any, honestly, he talked about, being tempted, and sometimes you have those people in your life that you're a great friend and you have everything in common, but you just don't want to be with them in that way. And some people are like, but there's no other reason I shouldn't marry this person because they fit X, Y, and Z. But I also, maybe this is the worldliness in me, but after the person is godly and your best friends and all that, do you have an attraction, a spark, for this person? Does this person light up your life? Because a lifetime is a long time to live with no sparks in your life. So you want to make sure that while you have that solid foundation, that you have some gravy on your biscuit. You got a cherry on the top of your cake, something that makes it worth living.
I applaud you guys for being real. I appreciate it. Yes. And she's got a comment here.
And she mentioned it about having somebody overlook your relationship, but I think we wait too late to do it. I take people through I call them my filters, my baby sister, my mother, and my brother, long before I've decided anything. Okay. You've run through the filter. We kind of wait till, I really like him and I love him and I want you all to like him too. And then by then it's kind of too late for us to change our mind.
Okay, all right. Let me say this about the role of the church. And this is a way we can get back to Acts. We can get to the book of Acts. The older people were supposed to mentor the younger people, right? The older women in the church were to help the young women in the church understand what it is to be a wife and a mother, so forth. And the men in the church were supposed to help the younger men. And we've gotten away from that, and we have this generational divide. One of the things that we can do to help each other in our church is to help eliminate that gap between the generations so that the young adults can look to the older married people and feel free to come to them with relationship challenges and say, hey, how did you, I watch your relationship with your wife. I'm going through this right now. I need some advice. I need some prayer. Can you give me some guidance? And we should be anxious. We should be looking for opportunities to speak wisdom and to give guidance and prayer to the young people coming up, because it is extremely difficult for them. I would not want to be a young adult right now living in this time and period. It's too hard. And so you need help, and the church is here to help you. And so let's see what we can do to help break that generational divide down. I'm going to wrap up with this comment to the brother's question about once a man is married, is it wrong to still be attracted to other women? Listen, as long as you remain a male, you're going to be attracted to women. I'm not talking about in the wrong way. You will admire their beauty because that's how God designed us, okay? But here's the difference. I would love and I appreciate cars. I like cars. I like nice cars. And when I drive onto the parking lot of a new car dealer, I admire the new cars in the parking lot. but I don't come back at night, break in and steal one and drive off with it. Okay? It's not mine. And the woman that God has given me is mine. The other ones are off limits. So if you see an attractive woman, you're going to acknowledge the attractiveness. You're going to see them. But you got to let it alone. You got to leave it at that. Okay? It's like seeing Mount Rainier when it makes an appearance. It's beautiful. Wow, that's awesome. All right? That it goes back in the clouds. Okay? The problem is if that admiring eye or whatever lingers too long and turns into fantasy, right? And turns into a desire for something that doesn't belong to you. Okay? That's what David's problem was when he saw Bathsheba. It wasn't just an admiring glance. And pretty soon he took what did not belong to him. Okay? So that's where you have to draw those lines. You have to have those boundaries in place ahead of time. Because you're going to be in situations all the time, at work, on the train. I travel a lot. You're going to be around. You don't live in a bubble. You're going to be in the company of women, some whom are very attractive. And you just have to know going in, just like divorce is off the table, you have to just know going in what's off the table. And so I will keep my mind in check and prevent situations where my admiration goes to another level, a dangerous level or a problem. Okay? So it's not suddenly that once you become married, you suddenly all the women in the world are unattractive. That's not realistic. But it's how you manage that, how you control that, and keep that under control. Okay? All right. All right, folks. I want to thank you for spending the last 2 hours and 10 minutes with us for Tender Times. I have a bunch of questions that we didn't get to, Samuel. We probably have enough for other sessions, if that is the desire of the group. And several people checked yes. So I'm hopeful that, thank you, I'm hopeful that we can schedule more of these talks and hopefully some other topics as well. But thank you for your time and attention. I hope it was helpful to you. Amen. Praise the Lord.
Okay. If you have any pens that you borrowed, if you could kindly return them. I want to take the time to thank you all for coming. Firstly, we never expected this many people, so thank God and amen. And I want to acknowledge the people who worked behind the scenes to help get this program done. Chanel, if you would please raise your hand. She's going to hate me for this, but Chanel and Alex is in the back. Thank you guys for your support and for your help trying to get this together. We hope this isn't the first and the last. I've enjoyed this thoroughly, and I hope you have too. And so we plan a couple more sessions, including ones dedicated for marriage, which will also be useful for everyone here as well, because it's important that we find knowledge and education in the church and not from the outside. So once again, I'd like to thank you for your time, and I would invite you to please stand as we pray. Heavenly Father, Lord, we're so thankful for your love. We're so thankful for your grace, giving us a beautiful day to come to worship you, to give you praise, glory, and honor. We thank you so much for the wisdom you've shared through Pastor Randy and his guidance, leading us to love like you loved us. Continue to be with us as we depart. Let your Holy Spirit continue to be with us throughout the week. Help us make the right choices and help us make the right decisions. Help us to choose you, Lord, every day as we wake, and to make that commitment to keep our connection with you. Continue to bless us until we meet again for another session with the young adults group here at Renton Seventh-day Adventist Church. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.